Everybody ready? Ready?
Yeah.
All right, listen.
It's your weekend show.
Quiet, numbskulls, I'm broadcasting.
With Bob Biermann.
It's great.
I can honestly say for the first time in almost 3 years, this program today for me, for some reason, is hard to do. I woke up in the wee hours of the morning thinking about what I should talk about today on the program. Yet my heart is just in this very restless stage. Had a hard time sleeping. Couldn't get a good night's sleep. Haven't really for several days now. There seems to be something going on in the background. There seems to be something in the back of my mind, in my spirit, as I do this program. I know I'm supposed to do the program, but today was one of those days that if I could have found a backup program from a year ago to use, you know something? I would have been very tempted to use it. Yet there is a lot of my heart and mind on things going on in the world, and also this restlessness that I'm experiencing right now, the likes of which I've never experienced before. This is, like I say, the first time I've ever come before this microphone feeling, well, the way that I do. And I'm having a hard time understanding where it's coming from and why. Is it some kind of a battle inside? Is there something to fight, some decision to be made? It's hard to say. Maybe you've been there and you can understand exactly what I'm going through, as I know that I'm coming to a point of having to make some very, very important and vital decisions in my life and in the work of my ministry, and even in how I do this radio show from week in and week out. This program has been an experience over the past, going on almost 3 years now. We talk about life. We talk about the struggles we go through, the good times and the bad. And right now, I will tell you, my audience, that today is just one of those strange days where I just don't feel up to doing the program. But I know that I have to. And there are a few things that are on my mind. I want to take a look at the news and give you some things that kind of crossed my mind. Right now in the Middle East, in Iran, there is some civil unrest. There are protests in the streets, the first time really since 2009. Though not quite as big, they're seemingly being ignored by most of the mainstream media. And I've been trying to get my head around, what's going on in that country of Iran. A lot of us have some preconceived notions about that country, but you really need to know some of its more recent history in the last, 100 years or so to fully understand. For many, many decades, Iran had a secular government with the Shah of Iran in charge, and they kept the radical clerics kind of suppressed. It was a Muslim country, but it had many Western attributes. The lifestyle of the people was very free. That all changed when radicals took over and held our people, our personnel from the United States hostage for 444 days. And this Islamic regime brutally came in, suppressed freedom, and took over. I'm certain that over these decades since that time, in 1979, 1980, a lot of people have, some are content with this new Muslim extreme government, but many people who are afraid to express themselves are not. I read an interesting article that gave me some insight of what might be going on. The country of Iran, which, like many theocratic governments that you find in the Middle East, especially within the Muslim world, does its best to suppress Christianity. And it seems, though, in recent decades, there has been a growth of Christianity in this non-Christian country where churches are forbidden. People worshiping, knowing they put themselves at great risk in what are called home churches. It was estimated a handful of years ago there might be 300,000 Christians in that country of 70 million. Now it's estimated it may be around 4 million and growing rapidly. It's amazing how the true church tends to grow when it's under persecution. I pray for those Christians in a country like Iran. And maybe this is why the government is so concerned, because they're seeing a new ideology coming in under the surface that threatens their control. And you have to wonder, is there any relationship at all between this underground growth of Christianity in Iran and what is happening in the streets? And maybe that's why, if we understand this, maybe that's why many in the mainstream media have chosen to ignore or minimize or even downplay the events that are occurring right now in that very closed country. Then we go halfway around the world again and look at places like North Korea. North Korea for 60 some odd years has been a problem. There was warfare. United States soldiers were killed. South Koreans, the Chinese were involved. It was a dangerous time that has just been in nothing more than a ceasefire for all these years. And we have this demilitarized zone between North and South Korea. South Korea, with freedom, has prospered and grown. Major corporations make so many things we take for granted today, like the Samsung phone, for example. Their industry is growing. And in North Korea, soldiers are being allowed to take a leave of absence to literally forage for food, because with the sanctions and everything else happening, people in that country go hungry every night, even though the elite and the government are fed well. It is truly a country of extremes and truly is a very dangerous player on the world stage. So today I come to you with this radio program, wondering why it is we do this show each week and what direction should it take. Look at the continent of Africa. This program is heard there. It is a huge continent, much bigger than North America. Diverse from literally the Mediterranean Sea to the north, all the way down to South Africa and all points in between. It is truly a unique place. But there are so many countries there where there is constant and never-ending turmoil. Yet I'm reading article after article about certain places in the sub-Sahara where Christianity, even in a Muslim-dominated area, is suddenly and out of nowhere beginning to grow. I think of stations like the Voice of Hope. We're on their Africa facility, and this program reaches countless numbers of people each weekend when we have the opportunity to be heard. But the Voice of Hope also operates a radio station in Israel, and this station is reaching into the Islamic world, and they're getting reports of people that are leaving Islam and embracing Christianity. What in the world is happening in this world of ours today? What can we expect in this coming year of 2018 that we have now begun? Here we are. The first week of the year is just about over as we air the program this weekend. And I have to wonder what this year is going to bring. I know where I live in the United States, we have been having some of the coldest weather that I can remember in, well, decades. Right now, I'm recording this program from Northeast Georgia, where we spend some of our time. And it has just been 20 plus degrees colder than it normally would be at this time of the year. This time of the year, we should have daytime highs reaching around 50 and maybe nighttime lows, maybe near or about 32 degrees freezing. These are Fahrenheit degrees. But we're not. We're having temperatures in the teens and even the single digits at night, and oftentimes not even rising above freezing by day. We have already had 2 snowfalls, which is more than the seasonal average. And as you look at the long-range forecast, even more to come. This weekend, as the program is airing, much of the northeastern United States will experience some major winter storm activity, record cold temperatures, blustery winds, and the coastline may see all the way down to Florida even snow and snow flurries, which is virtually unheard of. What a weather pattern. Of course, people now say maybe we're entering an ice age. Last year was global warming. The year before that, climate change. You know, I don't know what to expect anymore. The world is a changing place. We think that there is something that's supposed to be called normal and predictable. And the more years that I live, the more unpredictable this world has become. And it's really nothing new. Let me explain what I mean by that. We've seen more treacherous times than this in the last 50 to 100 years. I mean, look at World War II, look at World War I. These were catastrophic events that changed the face of continents, where millions of people died. You can go back in history and remember the great plagues of the Dark Ages. We have always had, if we're honest with ourselves, a very unstable and unpredictable world. And why is that? Why is this world the way that it is? You know, we're creatures of habit. We look for stability. We look for a daily pattern. We look for something that is familiar. And when you have these events like the weather, it makes you kind of wonder, what is going on in this world, and will it ever be springtime again? Now, if you're listening in the southern hemisphere, your weather's warm right now. And your winter time is coming in about 5 or 6 months. But in the northern hemisphere, for us to have down in the virtual tropic regions of Florida to see the possibility of a snow flurry is, well, I'm going to tell you, it's just unheard of. I've spent a lot of years in Florida since the 1990s. And I can remember these little cold snaps that appear normally sometime in January, maybe early February, that last a day or two. And I've seen temperatures even on the west coast of Florida touch or get just below freezing and cause some serious damage to a lot of the vegetation that is simply not able to deal with freezing temperatures. But it doesn't happen that often. And I don't remember, in all the years that I was there, hearing the word snow flurry in the forecast. Yet in some places in the west coast of Florida, well south of Tampa, that's exactly what they had. Unheard of. Unprecedented, at least in the time that I was there, and something we don't hear about. our world is going through some changes. It really is. And I look at this radio program today, and like I told you, if there was any way that I could have just found a best of program to substitute, today would have been one of those days that I wanted to. Like I say, it was such a sleepless night last night, and I just feel worn out, weary, tired, beaten down, and exhausted like I can't remember ever feeling in my entire life. And I don't think it has anything at all to do with the weather. I really don't. There's something going on in the subculture. There's something going on, dare I say, even in a spiritual realm that's causing some kind of change. And I'm trying to wrap my head around it, to fully understand what is actually going on. And I'm having such a difficult time comprehending. Even in the church world and that kind of work that I do, there's an uneasiness, there's a battle going on, and it's hard to discern. Maybe what we're seeing is a dividing. I've always believed, and in all the years of my study in God's Word, there's a time that comes when there's kind of a separation of those that follow Him truly and those that don't. You know, when things get difficult, especially in a church, it's amazing how many people, if it's a true church, will leave. It's amazing how people that really don't know the Lord want to run a church. I've never quite understood that, but I'm increasingly in my life beginning to believe how true that is. There are churches today, especially in the Western world, where the people believe that it's their church, they own it, they run it, they make the rules, and their rules become more sacred than God's Word and this faith that has been handed down to us over generations. And those churches are, in my experience, when you look over their history, when you look over a church that is run in that fashion, there's always some level of turmoil underneath the surface. There's always somebody stirring the pot. There's always some angst. There's always some anger. There's always a bit of battle and warfare going on. There's always division. There's always posturing. Those churches that are run by people who claim ownership and make the rules and make their rules more important than what the Lord teaches. You know, when Jesus speaks to us in the Gospels, those words recorded were not mere suggestions. They're commands. And yet I've seen in so many churches where the words of Jesus are merely taken as some kind of suggestion. They're not absolute. And we vote and we decide what we believe and how we'll run this church. Yet I have learned that the true church, let me say that carefully, the true church is the living body of Christ on this earth. It is not a building. It is not a denomination. It is not a piece of paper written by men saying how they will organize. It is so far beyond that. It is the living body of Christ, and Christ is the one and the only head of His church. And He raises up those that will serve in His church. Not your church, but His church. And this, my friend, is what I think is happening in Western Christianity today. This battle for what the church is, or what we conceive it to be. On one hand, you have churches that have watered down the gospel and become almost entertainment centers. They have great music. They have preaching and teaching that stimulates the ear and the mind. But what depth are you really receiving from that preaching? What are you really walking away from besides a pep talk some weeks? There are those that will tell you that if the praise band or the worship leader doesn't make them feel good on a particular Sunday, then they feel like they have not worshiped. They got nothing out of it, because our faith then becomes all about us, a very narcissistic faith, all about me, all about my wants, all about my desires. The church, just like a lot of entertainment industry, is often driven by marketing. And I use the church in a very loose term. So much of the music today and so many of the churches are put out by for-profit corporations. And everybody needs to be on board singing the same stuff and buying the same CDs or downloads. And this is supposed to be the total of our spiritual life and experience. And somehow God's message is being reduced to cleverly scripted videos, sermons or messages that are there to make us feel better about ourselves in our daily lives. The one word you don't hear much anymore is being a living sacrifice. A living sacrifice. That's what the Bible tells us we're supposed to do. Wholly yielded unto God as a living sacrifice. We are to be His servants, not His audience. Let me say that again. We are called to be the servants of the risen Lord Jesus Christ, not His audience to be entertained, to have our ears tickled, to make us feel good. You know, in the first centuries of the church, there's something that really needs to be remembered and something that needs to be brought back. To be a Christian in those first 10, 20, 30, 50, 100, 200 years plus was not an easy thing to do. You would be hunted down. You could be arrested. You could be killed and martyred for your faith. And in those first 400 years of the faith, most people that came to the saving knowledge of Jesus Christ fully understood that becoming His follower may forfeit their earthly life. They may lose their possessions. Today, I would say in the Western church that if it came down to the risk of losing your life, losing your house, losing your job, there are many that go to what they call their church would cease to go to their church because their life and their possessions and their things mean far more to them than the things of God. And maybe that's part of the angst that I'm feeling today as I go through this deep inside and very, very quiet spiritual battle. We are living in a world of change, and I believe we will have good economic times for a while, but which means now's the time. Now's the time to do the things we need to do to get that true message of Jesus Christ out to the world. This is the day and this is the hour. One of the problems, especially in the realm of shortwave radio, have been those that have been on the air promoting their own personal revelation, their own thought process, and they've built their own dynasties and themselves up. The one thing that I strive not to do is to become some self-indulged individual on the air, thinking more importantly of myself than I should. I just want to be known to you as I do this program week in and week out as just a struggling servant of God, trying to do those things that God has called me to do. You know, I look at some of these ministries out there, and Lord forgive me, but some of them I really have to wonder about. I really do. When you have ministries that have millions of dollars flowing through, and those in high places are living this very elaborate life, enjoying all the riches of life, and yet many of those that support those ministries are having a difficult time getting through life. And they give to these people sacrificially, expecting, because they've been told if they sow a seed here or give this money there, that somehow they too can prosper and be wealthy. You know, I have never in my life given a dime to a ministry expecting some big cash reward back to me in return. I've never done that. I've given to those ministries in my life that I have found to be true, that I have found to be honorable, that I have found to be good stewards of what they are given to do the work that they are called to do. There's so many out there that have their radio and their TV programs, and they sell books and CDs and all kinds of things. But you know, the Word of God and His blessings are not for sale. You know, in the book of Acts, I'm just thinking about this. We used a term in ministry called Simeism. Let me explain what that is. Simon the magician came up to the apostles because he had seen them perform some miracles, things that he wished that he could do, and he wanted to buy that power that they had because he believed in his heart if he could possess the power that these apostles had when they were out in this world, how wealthy he could become as a magician if he only knew the secret to how they were doing all these miraculous things, healing the sick, opening the eyes of the blind, the cripples being able to walk. He wanted to buy that power for his own personal gain. And I believe there are those that try to use the things of God for their own personal gain. And they have done so much damage to the cause of Christ. Like I say, this has been one program. This has been one program that if I could have had a backup, I would have used it. Because every moment that I speak on this mic is coming with such difficulty, yet such conviction and such concern. I know and I believe and I trust that in the days and weeks ahead as I go through this process, that the Holy Spirit of God will answer the many questions that I have and the concerns that I'm feeling and the sleepless nights that are resulting. I know in my heart that God has a special and specific purpose for what He wants me to do, not just in this radio show, but in other aspects of the things that I do day in and day out. You know, this year of 2018 could be, I believe, a great, unprecedented time to sharing the true faith using all the technology that is out there before us, whether we're using old school technology like shortwave radio, AM and FM, or the new technologies of the age, the smartphone, the online presence. This could be a year, it truly can. This could be a year of change and a separation. You know, the Bible teaches us the day's going to come that God begins to separate the goat from the sheep. You know, there's the parable of the vineyard. And the servants came to the master one day and said, somebody's planted weeds or tares, is what the King James Bible uses. And you know, that's there among the good wheat. What do we do? Do we rip out those weeds? And the master said, no, because if you do, you might damage the good wheat. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to let these weeds grow side by side with the wheat. And at the time of harvest, we will bundle up those weeds and burn them. And take aside the good crop and store it. Something tells me we're coming into a time such as that right now. You know, I've listened over the years to a lot of end-time ministries, many for over 40 years. And I've heard some outrageous things and prophetic statements, so many of which have never come true, that should have come true a year ago, 10 years ago, 30 years ago, 40 years ago. God will come in his own time. He really will. I know for me and this program, this could be a watershed year, a time of real change, a time of real impact. I also believe God is raising up people to carry on his work. I was reading some statistics about what it means to be a worker, a pastor, so to speak. It's not an easy life. You know, only 10% of people that are in ministry will ever retire from ministry. They'll retire from something else. The burnout rate, the lack of friends, the battles you face under the surface that just go unseen. It's part of what I'm going through right now. It's a part of what ministry is. And there are times you have to decide something that Jesus taught his disciples, and it's not an easy thing to do. It's not an easy thing to discern, and you take your time and you pray it through. There are times in ministry that you are dealing with people that are refusing to receive that word. And what do? When Jesus was beginning his ministry and had disciples and followers, he sent them out 2 by 2 to proclaim his message. And he said, any place that receives you and my message, say peace upon that house and stay with them for a season. But to those that are in contradiction and reject that message, you're to brush the dust off your sandals and leave it behind. Not to waste your time. And I think many people in ministry hit that point in some of the work that they do. They're trying to proclaim the true gospel of Jesus Christ. They are trying to abide by his holy and unchanging word. And they are fighting a battle. They are dealing with people that don't want to receive that word. They want to receive the word they want to hear. Jesus says to kick the dust off your shoes and move on. St. Paul reminds us that the day is going to come that people will heap upon themselves teachers to preach only what they want to hear. And I can think of a number of churches major church bodies that have walked away from all scripture, tradition, and reason and reinvented their own faith, their own interpretation, their own private interpretation that is in contradiction to what's clearly stated. And they heap upon themselves teachers that'll tell them what they want to hear, not what they need to hear. And oftentimes, the one trying to proclaim that true word of God, that one that is trying to be faithful and true to what Jesus tells them they should and must do, runs against the tide. And the message they are trying to present is thwarted, ignored, and even outright rejected. Living in the faith is a spiritual battleground. We do not own Christ Church. We can have all the votes at assemblies and meetings, and we can write bylaws and constitutions and everything for our churches. But if one word or sentence of our man-made work disagrees with what Jesus has clearly taught us in his word, then our votes simply don't matter. And this is what I have a hard time often understanding. How so many churches today can feel so empowered to do whatever they believe they want to do with what they consider to be their church. There's a great old hymn. The church's one foundation is Jesus Christ, her Lord. She, the church, is his new creation by water and the word. From heaven he came to sought her to be his holy bride. With his own blood he bought her, and for her life he died. Church, if you're in a church or a gathering or a group that takes full possession and control, and you feel the authority to make those decisions by voting of what you can and cannot say and do without giving any heed to God's word, you have ceased to be his church. You are no more than just a spiritual or feel-good club that happens to sing religious-sounding music on a Sunday. There are so many churches out there where people go and they feel such a sense of ownership that God works for them as their servant. And they choose not to really and truly serve him. They look for the accolades of others for all the so-called great and wonderful things that they do. They look at a pastor as a mere employee that abides by their wishes. He's not there as God's leader for them, to guide them, to help them, to preach the word and pray for that congregation, to be a part of that body of Christ, to be its teacher at the local level and spiritual leader. There's so many churches today that are board-driven. They're driven by their own board of directors, so to speak, and they feel that board has more authority and power than God's word. If that describes the church you're in, then that is no longer Christ's church. It is nothing but an imposter. It is not a real church. In a real church, people's lives are changed. In a real church, people will give sacrificially and willingly and happily and joyfully and cheerfully. In a real church, you don't worry about budgets. You worry about how to reach more people with the good news of Jesus Christ. In a real church, your building is not the most important asset. It's the people that are the true asset. I can't believe that I've been talking for as long as I have. This is not what I normally do on your weekend show. If you're just tuning in and don't know who we are, what the program is, let me tell you real quick. You can find out about Your Weekend Show at our website, yourweekendshow.com. That's yourweekendshow.com. You can find out about me, the stations that we are on around the world. We also have a Facebook page. Simply look for Your Weekend Show and make that all one word, makes it work the best. If you've listened to me today, you may hear something in my voice. And I can't really explain how I feel, but I feel almost alone, almost desolate. And I'm trying to understand exactly why I feel the way today that I do. It almost doesn't even make any sense. But you know, I really believe that as this program airs over the weekend, I'm trusting God for some answers, for direction, for my life, the ministry, how this program will be conducted. What kind of mission should the program have going into the year of 2018? What direction could it take to be of better service to my Redeemer and my King? The program is not about me. This program is to help you in your daily walk. And there are times like today that you wake up when you're doing this for so long, you feel a bit defeated. You feel a bit down, and you wonder, what does the future truly hold? We stand here at a new year seeking what God can do. All I ask for me is His clear direction so I can truly serve Him and honor Him in the way that I should. I hope you'll take some time and visit the website. Maybe something that I've said has inspired you to even maybe send me an email. Give me your thoughts. Maybe you've been there too, and you can share your experience with me as I will share this time that I'm going through, this period that I know is a period of profound and real change in this very uncertain world. We may see some good economic times for a season. The whole world could be turned upside down in a matter of days. You never know. This is Your Weekend Show, and I'm your host, Bob Biermann.
You are here, moving in our midst. I worship you. I worship you. You are here, working in this place. I worship you. I worship you. You are here, moving in our midst. I worship you. I worship you. You are here, working in this place. I worship you. I worship you. Hey, waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. Waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. You are here, touching every heart. I worship you. I worship you. You are here, healing every heart. I worship you. I worship you. I worship you. You are here, meeting every need. I worship you. I worship you. Oh,
I don't know about you, but I really needed to hear that song today. To know that when we hit these times of profound discouragement, that He is there to hear us. You know, God inhabits the praise of His people. And I believe there are times in our life that we forget to give Him praise, even in our most difficult times and circumstance. I remember a number of years ago a Southern gospel hymn that was very popular, maybe 15, 20 years ago or longer now. It's called God of the Mountain. He's still God in the Valley. And it says it's so easy to praise Him and give Him thanks when times are good and life is easy and everything's fine. There's no crisis going on. And I can identify with that. We all can. It's our human nature. But it's those times when you're down in the valley, you're discouraged, you're alone, you're beaten, you're depressed. That's the time that it's so difficult in our human nature to give Him the praise and the honor and the glory that He is truly due from each and every one of us. And I'm as guilty as anybody with this. I'm as human as anybody else. I can remember a time 14 years ago now. I can't believe that it's been 14 years ago. Many of the things that I went through, they feel like they just happened yesterday sometimes when I think about it. It was a time that, well, it was difficult. More difficult than I thought I could ever get through. But I did. This is probably, for me, in my lifetime, one of the most difficult things that I have ever gone through. And I know that it's spiritual warfare. And I know that it's meaning a change is coming. What I need to do, the most important thing I could possibly do at this point in my life, is to stop, praise Him, and thank Him for all the things that He's done in my life to date. Let Him take hold to give peace, that peace that passes our human understanding, that we simply cannot comprehend. Like that song said, when you're up on the mountain and everything's good, it's easy to have that smile on your face and be thankful. But it's those times when you are at the exact opposite, when you're down in that valley of depression, you're down in that valley that seems like you've been defeated. It's those times that it's so difficult to hear that voice and to find that praise and thankfulness in your heart. It goes against everything we are by our very nature. You know, my simple prayer begins with this concept. And we'll start with the radio show first. My goal is not to be the biggest radio show on the air around the world, or in the United States, or anywhere. It's to do a radio show that reaches that one person that needed to be reached, wherever that person actually is. I know that people, I looked the other day at some emails that came, and reports where people had heard this radio program and where they are listening. In places like Italy, places like the Middle East, Canada, the United States, India, Pakistan, Australia, across the continent of Africa. People hear this program. You know, and I understand by the very nature of some of the locations this program is actually heard, I may never hear from a number of those that listen because they may live in a country unfriendly to the gospel and they're afraid to even send an email for fear it may be discovered because it could put their life in peril. I remember, has to be almost 20 years ago now, I was serving a church in North Carolina. I was young in my ministry, probably my first or second year. And I had this lady that went to the church every Sunday, and she brought her husband, who was from India, with her. Now, she was an American, married to a guy from India. He was a Hindu. She had been raised a Christian, and she found our little church and started coming, and he started coming just to be, you know, a good husband, to come and listen politely. And over the weeks and months that he attended, he approached me one day, and he wanted to know more about this Jesus. He wanted to know more about living as a Christian. He was a devout Hindu, believed it fully, but suddenly the reality and the truth of the message of Jesus was ringing and resonating in his heart and in his mind. And so I shared that simple message with him of what it takes. And there, in a living room, he accepted Jesus Christ as his Savior. And a few weeks later, knowing that this would destroy the relationship that he had with all his family back home in India, he was baptized. Knowing that that would separate him from his family, he would be an outcast. They would shun him and never speak to him again because he had left the Hindu faith and became a Christian. You know, in the Western world, England, anywhere in Europe, Canada, Australia, the United States, at least at the moment, there's nobody that's going to take your job, put you in jail for claiming to be a Christian and even going to church. But there are people that make that sacrifice each and every day, all across the world. I mentioned at the beginning of the program, if you were listening, as we look at some of the events that are going on in the country of Iran right now, there's something happening in the background over these last 7 or 8 years. The media doesn't tell you this because it doesn't fit the narrative, and frankly, they wouldn't understand it if they did hear it. It would make no sense to them. It is estimated in 2009 there were probably 300,000 Christians in a country of 70 million. Not a huge majority, but in these recent years, that number has risen to close to 4 million that we can potentially count. It may even be higher in the country of Iran, a country where being a Christian is illegal. It can put you in prison. Yet people are coming to a living faith. They're coming to that living faith in places like India. They're coming to that living faith in places like Pakistan. They're coming to that living faith in countries like Syria. They're coming to that living faith in countries like Iraq and Iran and others. The word, the message is being preached. And here in the Western world, where we've taken our Christian heritage for granted, we live, let's be honest, in a post-Christian world. If we're really honest with ourselves, we live in a post-Christian world where we take matters of faith and the blessings that God has given us for granted. We no longer acknowledge Him as Creator and Sovereign. In fact, many mock and ridicule him and anybody that believes upon his name. Yeah, I'm going through a difficult transitionary period. It started before Christmas. We got through Christmas. And I know the changes coming in this coming year are going to be profound beyond words. I can't quite put my finger on exactly how this is going to play out. I don't know. But I do know that the year of 2018 is going to be a time of change, at least in my life. And something tells me there's somebody listening right now who is going through something similar and will be facing some profound changes in their life as well. God is looking for workers in his kingdom, workers for his vineyard. Well, you know something, I can't believe that another week has come and gone. It seems we just get started, and the program has to come to a close. I hope you'll take some time this week and let me know that you listen if you can, or at least let the radio station that you hear the program on, let them know that you hear your weekend show. You can visit our website, www.yourweekendshow.com. That's yourweekendshow.com. You can always find us on Facebook, Your Weekend Show. Make it one word, Your Weekend Show, and maybe send a message from there. This has been a very difficult show to do, but I'm thanking God that I got through it. And hopefully something I said will have meaning for you. Until next week at this same time, may God richly bless you.
It's Your Weekend Show with Bob Biermann.